I'm thinking, why the heck is my paycheck and my wife's paycheck going into my bank making 0.0001% when I should be putting it into the credit line since it's there anyways?
And you got access, you're not losing access to the money. That's the greatest thing, because everybody's smart enough to know to pay back debt quicker, throw extra at it. But why don't people do that more? Because it's a one-way door. They know they're sacrificing. Well, what if I want to go out with my friends? I might need that money for something else. I know it'd be good to pay it off. I'm putting it in somebody's pocket that I can't get it back. That's the biggest problem with the model that we're in right now, right? And the interest you pay them is just a cost of doing business. But remember, you're screwing them right underneath their nose. They're expecting to make the maximum amount of interest on your efforts, and they don't know what you're doing. You don't need their permission, but you're literally screwing them out of interest under their own nose. Be happy to pay them a little bit of interest along the way. It's just the cost of playing banker, and they're giving you the tools to do the job.
I'm Garrett Wong, and this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success, and what does winning look like for you? Bill, welcome to the show.
Hey there, Garrett. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure's all mine. We're talking in the green room. It's funny how weather is always an icebreaker, right? Oh, there you go with the bad pun already. But no, I always seem to talk to my guests ahead of time where the weather is, because we're up here in frozen Canada. You're down in Oregon. And I guess it's just different because we've got this whole remote thing going on. So it's been good. Yeah, so I've got I love the topic that we're going to be talking about. Why don't you do a brief intro to the audience so they can learn a little bit about your background, and then I'll dig into it some more with some of my questions.
All right, great. I'll try to be brief because my background, it's got lots of stories to it. But the bottom line, I ended up doing a recruiter a favor and went on a job interview for a mortgage broker. Owned a mortgage, didn't know anything about the business. Really, I was just doing the guy a favor. And I ended up getting the job. And, I was like any other mortgage broker, helping people get credit, right? That's their job. Until 2001, a guy from an Australian bank walked into my office and explained this special loan that they use in Australia. And he explained it to me, and I've pretty much dedicated my life to it ever since. With the start of Truth and Equity, what I'm doing today, we started in 2006. And if you look at that progression, statistically, most businesses go out of business within 5 years.
Yep.
And in my opinion, there's only two reasons. People don't like your product, or they don't trust you. And so we've got a crazy product in a very tough industry to work in. And 19 years later, I hope it says something to somebody. We got a really good product, and we do our job. But anyway, that was 2006, and here I am today. Went through a couple financial fiascos. The Great Recession 15 years ago. We had COVID a couple of years ago. We've been in business for 4 or 5 presidential administrations. We've seen it all, and we're still here, man, kicking.
Still standing.
Still kicking.
Love it. Love it. So how long were you a mortgage broker before the banker walked into your office?
That was, it was 96, beginning of 97 when I started. So it was about 4 or 5 years when I got introduced to it. And then 2 years later, I got offered a job. They offered me a job, so I went to work for them. So I actually worked for the Australian bank until 2006. Their business model was account executive to broker to the public, like any other broker. And that model wasn't working for me. I was going to starve to death because I discovered most brokers didn't get this concept like I did. And that's when I just walked away. I quit.
So what did you do before mortgage brokering?
Right previous, I owned a print shop of all things. And I didn't know anything about printing either. I was actually a headhunter for printing right prior to that. And I didn't know anything about printing. I was just faking it till I made it. And then this guy that I got to know, he says, I'm going to go take over a shop that's been in Eastern Washington since World War I. And he says, I'm not doing it without you. I said, okay, I'm in. And
so what were you guys printing?
Commercial printing, from business cards, brochures, posters. I mean, it was just a small commercial shop. and it was one of the funnest things I've ever done because there was constantly something going on. And I was dealing with customers walking in the door. I did all the taxes, all the payroll, hiring. I learned how to design stuff. I ran cutters. I mean, by the time I was done 2 years, I could do just about anything in a shop except for running a press. That's the only thing I didn't do is run a printing press.
So this is interesting. This did not come up in the green room. So I come from a printing background. So my
Hmm.
dad owned a small printing shop as well. And I was going to say, like, hold up your fingers to the camera for me, because yeah, I can count all 10. Audience, like when Bill's talking about like a print cutter, like these things are terrifying. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
you push a button and there's literally a guillotine that comes down like this and slices through like 8 inches of paper.
yeah, like
Um,
butter, like butter.
like nothing. You actually hear like a little ripping sound that it's going through. It's just terrifying. And my dad owned, like you said, turn of the century. Like we had like these Heidelberg presses, and I
Exactly.
remember what's that?
I said exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and the cutter that we had was not one of those ones where you push a button. I had to actually step on this big metal thing and then pull both handles back. And you were stepping on the clamp itself. Like it wasn't like these modern ones. I mean, but I got really strong forearms because I was running the printing press and loading paper. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. You probably still have the techniques. You squeeze and push and get that air in there. And, you know,
there you go. And I'm trying to actually, because in property management, we still send out leases by paper, because that's how some people want it. And yeah, I'm still fluffing things up, and they're just like, "How are you fanning that out?" And I'm like, "It's in my DNA."
yeah. Yeah. I can still, yeah, I can still put a stack of paper next to each other, roll my finger across it, and I'll have 500 in each one,
Yeah.
just by rolling your finger back and forth. You remember that little trick?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny,
No,
man.
it's
I love printing, man. That was fun. That was a fun job.
yeah, getting high on printing chemicals. I learned as a young teenager, just like we're talking offset printing right now. Everything's digital, right? But
Yeah.
you take your image, make a negative of it. I'm in the dark room there, and come out, and we burn it onto a metal plate. Like, yeah, those are my earliest memories.
Yeah. Well, the
But
reason we went out of business is we were actually the first print shop in the state of Washington to go fully digital, direct to plate, right?
okay, yeah,
First. I mean, that was brand new technology. We're talking 92, 93. Well, the guys that sold it to us, they didn't know anything more about it than we did. And we had to pay for the debugging and figuring it out. And I mean, it cost us tens of thousands of dollars. And we just like, you know, put
yeah.
us out of
Sometimes
business. I
being
mean, it was a
first is
sad
not
thing.
good.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was a sad thing. That put Technology put us out of business by trying to be first in,
yeah.
you
Well,
know.
that's a great segue into technology, the systems that we have running today. Why don't you tell me, what was the first spidey sense, whatever Jiminy Crickets on your shoulder of the banking system, and when you started to really not buy the rhetoric?
Um, I would have to say, to be honest with you, that would probably be when the bubble popped 15 years ago.
Okay. So oh
Because,
07, oh 08.
yep, 08, 09. Because I got to be
Yeah.
honest with you, man, I got into the business in 96. And when in 99, when Clinton said everybody gets to own a home, right? You have the liar loans and, no
Yeah.
credit score minimums. I mean, I was a part of that. I mean, you're in the business and you just wake up and make money. Who's not going to do that? You know, but when the bubble popped, that really opened my eyes where I started to dig in. Really, what's the business model behind our business model? It's like the 80/20 rule. You're familiar with that, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to probably bring that up more than once through our conversation because, what we see and how we operate conventionally, our traditional finances, that's only 20%. We're only 20% of what's really going on behind the scenes. And
Right.
where's all this money flow, right? If you look at the flow of money in our country and in Canada, it all starts with the consumer's paycheck, right? Because we're the ones that push the money back into the economy.
Right.
Without us earning money and pushing it out back into the economy, there's no economy. So if you follow the flow of that money, and see what are the results of the consumer and what are the results on the back 80%, it is so imbalanced that's when I really made the connection of what I was doing too, especially after years of monitoring and being part of people's progress through the strategy that we teach. That's when it all started coming together for me in a very big way, where I could start really connecting the dots and saying, okay, we're not doing anything wrong as consumers. We're doing exactly how we've been taught and told. Earn a good, get that education, earn a good living, good budget, low rate, low payment, and feed everything else you can into your 401k. That's really the model of American finance.
That's America. Yeah, that's what our parents taught us, right?
Yeah. Well, if you start breaking that apart, if you look at just on the asset side, I've done a deep dive. If you look at the net worth of the top 20 fund managers in this country, their net worth, top 20, their net worth is $250 billion.
Top
When it's
20.
top 20. And when you look at a 65-year-old average balance in a Vanguard account, it's $275,000 at 65 years old. And that's before taxes. So you look at, we're pumping our money to these people for stability and riches later, but who's getting rich? And when you break it down from a debt side, the country's got 37 trillion dollars in debt. It's costing the country $1 trillion a year. And we all know that's devastating to the country. And if you look at the government, they've got all sorts of tricks to get rid of that debt. They got tariffs, we got taxes, they can sell guns and ammo. They've got mechanisms to get rid of that debt. Now you look at the consumer side. The consumer debt load in America is 18 trillion, one half of the government's. And that's costing us over $1 trillion a year just in interest, just like the government. Now, what sort of tips and, what sort of mechanisms does the consumer have to attack that debt? They got no guns to sell, no tariffs that impose on anybody. What do we do? What are we taught? Budget, low rate, low payment. You cannot budget and interest rate yourself out of an $18 trillion debt. But what's important to understand is 12 trillion of that debt is mortgage debt. So
Okay.
that's considered good debt because it's got an asset under it, right? And you get the tax write-off, which is not so much of a good deal for anybody, but at least there's an asset attached. That 12 million is, people have leveraged their money for an asset for 12 trillion of that debt. So that leaves 6 trillion for everything else: credit cards, student loans, vehicles, etc.
Right.
And if you look at what the requirement, monthly requirement for the country is, right? Because if you work the math backwards, you can pretty much figure out how much money is leaving the American consumer's pocket just to service debt. And that equates to 30 to 45% of somebody's paycheck. If it's actually more than that, because you're qualified on gross income, right?
Yeah, that's true.
With those numbers, if your gross income was 10 grand, then you've got $4,500 going out the door for mortgages and debt, right? Because the debt to income ratio requirement is 45%. Well, that's on gross income, right? So that's $4,500. But if we don't live on gross income, we're losing 30 to 40% to the feds with taxes and 401ks, right? So on 10,000, there's 4,000 gone for taxes and 401ks. Then you got $4,500 going out the door for mortgages and everything else. There's $8,500 gone.
Yeah.
That leaves $1,500 on a $10,000 gross income. That leaves $1,500 for everything else. And you cannot, that a single person can barely live off that in this country.
So, I mean,
you
the
see where
debt itself.
see the problem, see the discrepancy?
Yeah, I do.
know?
And so tell me, like 20 years ago, what did debt look like in America?
It was about the same, but a lot less. About 20 years ago, we owed about 8 trillion.
Okay, 8 versus 18.
But the business model was still the same,
Yeah,
right?
the ratios are still the same.
Exactly. The ratios have not changed since I've been in the business for 30 years. In fact, if you look at how we bank and borrow, take away technology, because technology is the only thing that's changed the way we bank and borrow. We're still the same people as we were 50 years ago. Earn, checking account, redistribute. 50 years ago, when I was, a kid and earning money, you got a paycheck, you stood in line, you had a checkbook register and cash, and you kept your eye on the ball all the time. What do we have today? Auto draft or auto deposit into the account, auto draft for the bill payments, and swipe plastic for payments.
Yeah.
Nobody's keeping their eye on it. Not
No,
like
I
we
mean, it's
not
getting
like
easier
not
and
like we
easier.
used to.
Yeah.
But still, the American consumer, I mean, if you look at that 18 trillion in debt, if you look at it from if you look at the government, why do we have all that debt? Gross mismanagement and fiscal irresponsibility. That's why we have debt in the country. But the bad thing is, though, when we look at the consumer with all that debt, oh, well, look at that irresponsible consumers borrowing, living beyond their means.
Mhm.
But I got a different view. I look at that and say, why do we have that? Because we are really good at what we do. And the companies that extend credit are really good at what they do, because we couldn't borrow all that money if we didn't maintain good credit scores, good debt to income ratios, and we're fiscally responsible. And if you look at who's been borrowing since the bubble pop 15 years ago, that's all A grade paper from 2012 till today, because those, lending to poor credit grade is gone,
Mhm.
right? So if you
Yeah.
look at all the borrowing from 2012 to today, which is about 8 trillion, those are all solid borrowers, good credit, good jobs, pay their bills, fiscally responsible. And so we're doing what we're told to do. We're doing a good job. And those people that extend credit, they're doing a good job. But I'm the other side of the coin guy. Now what? Right? And are
Yeah.
people struggling paying for gas and groceries? Or are they struggling to pay off debt? And are they giving away too much to the government right from the beginning? Right? Now it's the business model of repaying debt, low rate and low payment, keep refinancing and chasing lower rates, like the interest is causing the problem. And then now we got inflation, you know?
All right. So let me ask you, because I think what you're alluding to, a lot of people, and you've said it practically, that people believe that the banks are really just there to make money, right? Off of everybody else. What are your views on that? Although I think that's pretty clear, but again, that's why you're on the show, I hope. How do we break the cycle? How do we break that cycle of only the banks getting rich off of our money when we're doing all the right things?
Well, that is an exceptional question. It really is. Well, the banks they make money from our money, right?
Yep.
That's their business model. That's what they do. They don't sell groceries. There's no furniture. There's no nothing. They make money with our money, right? And I'm not begrudging them for that, right? I mean, everybody's in the business to make money. That's what I'm in the business to make money, because a handshake and a smile doesn't you don't get a cart full of groceries with a handshake and a smile. So we're all in the money business. Doctors, everybody, they just provide a certain service to get at the money. Banks are the same way. The problem I have with the banks is the imbalance and their superiority. Oh my God, we've all put them on this pedestal, and they're making billions of dollars per quarter, billions of dollars, which is cool. I'm great with a profitable business model, but again, this is our money. You're making that kind of money with our money, and we don't get any of that kickback. I
Right.
mean, they could pass $1 million. The banking industry could get every citizen in the country $1 million, and they would still walk away with billions a month of profits. And so my only thing is, we should be getting some of that back, but that's a culture. We're not changing that. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why what I do is so important. Now, what you got to recognize, how do they make their money? We give them money and they leverage.
Right.
Leverage is the key word. That's the bank. That's the secret of the rich. It's the secret of
Yeah.
anybody that's making money with money. It's all about
I'm a
leverage.
real estate guy. I mean, leverage is my best friend, right?
Yeah. Well, anybody that owns a home, you leveraged a down payment, 30 grand to acquire a $300,000 asset
Right.
in your 401k every week, every payday. When you put money into that 401k, you're leveraging that balance up to earn interest, right? So leverage is the key. Now, let's look at it on the consumer banking side. The most important resource we have as consumers is that paycheck. It goes into a checking account and it falls into the bank's coffers so they can go leverage it to make money. And we manage that balance in the checking account, right? Not understanding the 80% of the action is going on with the bank making all the money while we're looking at our little 20%. And do I have enough? Do I have enough? You know the game. Well, this is what I've done with credit line banking is I'm teaching people, and this is really important to understand because I've got a bad label and it's my fault. I help people pay off debt. No, right? You're talking about people that are educated. Nobody needs my help managing their money. They're doing fine. But what I do is I teach a better model, and that model is how to leverage your income for financial gain, just like the bank, but I'm doing it on the debt side of the ledger. And that's where a lot of confusion comes in because most people, they don't understand how debt works, the 80%, as far as how does the interest get calculated? How is my payment calculated? How is it all applied once I make the payment? How is this all working in the back? And so, again, that's a big part of what I teach. But when you make a payment to a debt, the principal portion is leveraged against the balance to reduce the balance, right? Interest goes to their pocket. Interest is a cost of doing business. It's not a penalty, right? You don't have some mad scientist going, how much can we charge them? It's just simple mathematics. And
Right.
it's just a cost of doing business. I tell people all the time, if you don't want to pay interest, don't borrow money. If you don't want to pay taxes, don't earn an income.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's not realistic. So back to leveraging our income on the debt side of the ledger is that if you can leverage more of your income against debt, you'll save massive amounts of interest. It's like the difference between a $500 payment and a $5,000 payment. The $5,000 payment's going to have a lot more pushing that balance down, correct?
Yes.
And you have to be cognizant of the debt balance because the balance is what's costing us the money, not just the interest rate. The interest rate dictates how much, but you need a balance to calculate interest. And the higher the balance, the more interest you pay. We can all agree
Okay.
with that, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And so if you can leverage that balance lower, then you're going to save interest. So that's what credit line banking is all about is taking that income away from your checking account and leverage it against the debt to save interest. Now, how do you do that? You have to have that debt or a portion of debt in a revolving line of credit because it's got a two-way door, right? Just like your checking account. You can put money in, take it out. A revolving line of credit, whether it be a credit card, home equity line of credit, or an unsecured line of credit, it's the same animal. You got a two-way door. And so when you leverage your income into that line of credit, you push the balance down, you save interest. You didn't have to chase an interest rate. Because if you had a $10,000 balance and knocked it down to 5 grand, now you're only paying interest on 5 grand. If you, and as opposed to leave that money in the checking account, you pay on the 10 grand. So you're paying the maximum amount of interest. Push it down to 5, you've cut the balance in half, you've cut the interest cost in half without having to chase an interest rate. You see how that works?
Yeah. Okay.
Now, this requires a lot of visuals, right? So any of your listeners that want to know more, my whole call to action is just get on my calendar. I've got visuals and I'll teach you this stuff
Okay.
one side down the other. So try not to get lost in the description now. But it's simply a matter of pushing the balance down to save interest. Forget about the interest rate. Focus on the balance. Okay. Now, if we have all our income in that account, in that line of credit, we've got to get that money back out to pay our bills, right? That's why we have the revolving account, because when a bill comes due, you can go back into that instrument and get what you need to pay the bill. Now, that will obviously, bring the balance up a little bit, but that's okay because we saved interest along the way. And that's goal number one. Now, what's special about credit line banking and what the service we perform is we help you establish bill pay day. So we get everybody paid on one day. Forget their due dates. We're going to pay it on our terms. Now, we might not get 100% of our vendors and creditors to do that, but that's part of my services to help shore those people up. But if we can get, say, 100% of our bills due on one day, that means our income can stay in the line of credit and save us interest. We don't have to pull it out. So every day it sits in the line, we save interest. And that could be at 9, 10, 12% savings rate, which is pretty good, tax free. So when we pull our money back out of the line of credit, it's going to bring that balance up, right? Which is okay. And we're not borrowing money to pay our bills. We went to get our income because that's where we put it. Am I losing you on this?
No, I've heard of systems like this. I've been, looking into it. I mean, I don't know if you're talking about like a system. There's companies out there that will advertise a HELOC, home equity line of credit. You put your income in there to save the interest. But I haven't heard the twist on it, like you're saying, to have the money only going out because they're just like, okay, just like my view on it, unless I'm thinking of a different product, is okay, it's great if you're responsible. And if you're not responsible, you end up basically spending the equity of your home because it's like a free for all. Is there that danger in there too?
Yeah, but that's a human problem. And
Yeah.
how many people do you know that are just willy nilly irresponsible with their money?
Well, I used to be one of them, so they're out there.
Yeah, they are out there, but again, I've been talking to people at the consumer level for 30 years. Nobody's ever taken an elevator to my office. I've never been at the executive suite level. And so, but again, this is a good thing for me personally and everybody I deal with because I'm not jaded from the top. I'm not those guys at the top, they're there to protect what they're doing. And they're going to protect it because they've got a lifestyle that they've got to maintain. But if you get down to the street level and you talk to enough people, and again, back to the statistics, I mean, most people have a 660 credit score or better, right? That's not fiscal irresponsibility, right? And most people, if you talk to 10 people, you're going to find one person that's really living beyond their means every month, right? They're on their way out. 4 to 5 people will be paycheck to paycheck, but 5 to 6 people will have positive cash flow at the end of the month. They're not living to paycheck. There might not be much to save, and anything they do save through the year is probably going to get eaten up in vacations, and enjoying life. And everybody, that's why we all work hard. We work hard
Mhm.
to enjoy the spoils, right? And so, and it comes down to budgeting too. I hate that word. When people work with me, I want to know what you spend per month to live, but I don't do any budgeting. That budgeting is lifestyle. That's it. A budget is a lifestyle. And somebody that's making 25 bucks an hour, they're going to have the specific lifestyle. Somebody that's making 25 grand a month, they're going to have a lifestyle. And everybody's working their butts off to maintain that lifestyle. And the more money you make, the bigger the lifestyle, the more stress and pressure you have. you know, I work with a lot of people that make 25 grand a month and they only have a few $100 left over at the end of the month because they're living a lifestyle. So the budget thing, I never talk to anybody about the budget. I look at the debt because the problem with the debt is not the debt itself, it's the terms of repayment
Right.
and feeling that you live by it. Like the bank set the terms of repayment. The bank only sets the minimum to keep them happy. But when you sign a 30-year loan, it doesn't mean somebody's telling you you got 30 years to pay off your loan. That amortization table just says, well, if you make the minimum payment, it's going to take you 30 years. And if you want to pay off a mortgage in 15 years, what do? You go to your mortgage broker and you say, I'd like to pay off my mortgage in 15 years. And he says, all right, Garrett, let's take in that 15-year application. That's how it's going to go, right?
Right.
Well, if you call Bill Westrom, I'm going to say, well, let's just calculate a 15-year payment. If you make a 15-year payment on a 30-year mortgage, you'll be paid off in 15 years. And then if you know how to work the math backwards and find out what was the effective interest rate on that loan, right? Because if you're at 3.5% on your 30-year, but you accelerate the payoff, they
Mm-hmm.
use 3.5 through time. But if you look at the total interest paid, accrued interest, and do the math, you're going to find that your effective interest rate on the 15-year payment is about the exact same interest rate you would have got on the 15-year mortgage.
Okay.
So you can chase the interest rate by chasing the balance. If you want it, because it's the balance, it's costing you the money. If you chase the balance, interest will take care of itself.
Let's um let's break this down as a practical example for my audience because I mean, I understand what you're saying, but some people might not because it's a relatively foreign concept to them. But let's go back to square one. We're talking mainly about the largest asset people are going to have, which is a home and a mortgage. And when people they put their 20, 25% down and they have a 30-year amortization, meaning the length of time it's going to take to pay off the loan, the portion of interest on even a $300,000 home, if you amortize all the way out, that home is costing you about, just anecdotally, about double. Am I right on that?
Pretty close. Depends on the rate. The rate will dictate.
Yeah.
100%. Yep.
But back of the napkin math, a $300,000 house, you pay it off in 25, 30 years, that's now costing you 600,000, which is why young people, I believe, are not choosing to get into home ownership because they're like, I'm not getting to that trap. I'm just going to pay my $1,500 in rent for the rest of my life and not have to worry about furnaces and roofs. Um, so what you're talking about here, Bill, then is a way to mitigate not paying that extra, in my example, $150,000 of interest and still paying off the loan and having the same payment because you're managing the interest debt because of the way it's calculated and because that your your paycheck on payday and you and your spouse or whatever are going directly into the debt rather than going into a bank account that's only paying 1%. And then the bank is turning around and taking that money and loaning it out again and releveraging. Does that kind of sum it up?
Yep. Yep. That's from a 10,000-foot view. Yeah, you're pretty close.
Okay.
Um, there are a lot of idiosyncrasies, right? And before I jump away, because this is stuck in my brain, you have heard of this before in Canada, Manulife,
Yes. Well,
Manulife
that's,
One.
I didn't want to say it, but yes,
Yep,
that's the
that's
exact
one.
company I was talking about,
And
Manulife.
Macquarie, I believe Macquarie is still in Canada. They bailed in the U.S. market back in 2010, right? When the bubble popped, their business model couldn't make it. But
Okay.
that's why you've heard about it up there as Manulife.
Yes.
And then down here in the country, again, this has been around for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when the bubble popped, there were several companies and lenders that were into this before the bubble popped. When the bubble popped by 2010, Truth and Equity, our company was the only company left that was still promoting this. Now, since then, we've got competitors, which is, I'm okay with competitors. But that's why you've heard it up there, because it has been around a while. But I did want to make a point, and I learned this through the bubble popping, is that the first lien HELOC, doing this, converting a loan, your conventional loan, into a big fat HELOC, I do not do that. I don't promote it any time unless
Okay.
the numbers dictate. Because if you've got a 30-year conventional loan at 3, 4, 5%, keep it protected. We can keep that big debt protected, and we just work out of a smaller line. So instead of trying to restructure the whole chocolate cake, right, we can go at it piece by piece using a secondary line. Throw 25 grand on it, pay it off. 25 grand on it, pay it off. And so that's generally the way I do it 10 out of 10 times, because the risk is so much lower. Because the HELOC is going to be a variable rate loan, and we don't have to fear the rate if we're controlling the balance in a smaller loan. But if we expose, 300 grand into a HELOC, it's too dangerous. It's going to, It's going to nullify the benefits of the program because you've exposed a huge six-figure number.
Yeah.
And that's why I always keep that protected. And let's go get a $50,000 HELOC, and we can do anything we want with the 50 grand. We just do it again and again and again. And because we do it in that operation that way too, when you start out with a zero balance on that little line of credit, you're in control of the withdrawal. Just because you have 50, you don't use 50. You might just use 10, might use 12. And because you're in control of the balance, no matter what the interest rate does, you're in control of the interest cost. And that's the beauty of this whole thing is getting control of it, that you're not a subordinate, right? Because we play
Yeah.
subordinate to the bank. They've got my money. They said I can't do this. They said I can't do that. When it comes to our lenders, well, they said. So we play that subordinate role in the current model. But once you get into credit line banking and you're in control of that money, 100%. How much you pull out, how much you're paying back, how quickly you're paying it back. And so, again, I just wanted to finish up on what you were saying as far as the 10,000 foot view. I wanted to narrow it in a little bit
Sure.
because at 10,000 feet, it all sounds very scary. And no, I don't want to do that. I already got a low rate loan. And I just want to make sure people know that, we can do anything we want to in structuring the loan to optimize safety, minimize risk, maximize production results.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant what you just said, and I guess you're dumping large amounts or minimum pay or maximum payments on that mortgage every year. You're still saving tens of thousands of dollars. But I do have a question, and I love to challenge a little bit here, and I know you're going to have an answer. So, what about cash flow, right? Because it's one thing to say, okay, I'm saving tens of thousands of dollars. I'm going to pay off my mortgage in 15 years as opposed to 30, but I still need money to live. How is or is this generating cash flow, or is this a bigger picture, longer picture play?
Well, it's short and long term because, and this is probably the hardest part for people to grasp coming into it. It's kind of like, knowing what it feels like to drive a Ferrari without driving a Ferrari. We can talk about it all we want,
Okay,
but until you get behind the wheel, you're not going to know what it feels like. So
right.
that's what makes this kind of tough. But once you get into this environment, the line of credit just becomes the focal point for everything you do. Every dime that you get goes in, and every dime you spend goes out, and you just let things ride, and you monitor it on a monthly basis. And I my process, I don't just accept anybody that wants to do what I do. I've got a very specific process. I need to know who I'm talking with. What do they earn? What do they owe? What do they spend? Are they fiscally irresponsible? I got to get a feel for people. And then I built a special amortization table specifically for this strategy. It's what I started this whole business on. When my partner David and I started, we had a spreadsheet and a desire. We had no money. We had no business plan. I just said, I'm quitting. Do you want to go along? He says, I'm quitting too. And we had a spreadsheet, and that's how we started. But I still use that spreadsheet to throw people's numbers in it. So, and when I do that, we look at a month by month, year by year amortization, the money going this way and that way. Because when we're building the blueprint for the future of what we're looking to accomplish. And so everybody goes through that process with me. I'm very transparent. I got nothing to hide because it's scary enough to get into this for people. And that's why I want them to know as much as humanly possible and see what our life is going to look like together before I send out an invitation. So we go through that process, and we use that same spreadsheet. Once they're up and running, we use that same spreadsheet with real live data to gauge their performance, forecast any withdrawals. Might need a car down the road. Oops, I need tires, what have you. But back to try and get back to your question. It's all about cash flow. And when you see the cash flow flowing in and flowing out, and you can see the progress you're making, and we never spend the same amount of money every month, ever, right? Because our budgets are too fluid when it comes to gas, groceries, and dining. Those are
Okay,
the biggies that are going to fluctuate the budget, because everything else is pretty much a commodity and set. Your
right.
cell phones, your insurances, it's that sort of thing. But again, when it's all flowing through one thing and you just see the cash flow moving in and out, you just live your life because you don't have. I tell everybody, you're not going to change anything about your life. Nothing. You do you, and just change the flow of the money and watch what happens because you're putting the money to work. And once you actually see it, you just live your life and do your thing. Next thing you know, 6 months later, you've paid off $10,000. Didn't change anything about your budget. You still had you still had a vacation. You still did this. Nothing
Right.
changes. And it's all about changing the model, changing the flow of the money. Don't let it sit in a checking account and you distribute it and let the bank make money. You play banker because when you literally take the bank out of the equation, when you do this, you become the banker. And that's what I tell people I do. I teach you how to bank like a banker because because when that money goes into the line of credit, you've literally taken it out of the bank's hands. Even though it's the bank's line of credit, they can't go in and get that money. They can't go into your line of credit to pull money out to go make money.
No.
So when you put into the line of credit, you just took away their ability to make money off your money. It's an amazing, again, this is a heady thing, right? You
Yeah.
don't know it until you see it, but that's actually what you're doing. It's coming out of their hands. You're getting the gain and you still get access to your money. And so when we do this too, it is all about the cash flow because it's the money you have left over of your paycheck that's paying back the debt. Does that make sense?
Well, okay. So again, from a simpleton's point of view, so if we have a credit line, okay, whatever that percentage might be, and you can talk about how we're mitigating because we're putting large amounts in, and there's, due dates and things like that. I guess in my mind, Bill, like we're talking about an amount of money that we're saving on a mortgage. So I can't get past the fact of how am I saving money month by month? I know I'm saving on the house. I probably have a little bit of interest that I have to pay, but I mean, are we generating more riches for ourselves to live life for today, not for tomorrow? Like, I mean, is there anything there, or is it literally just I'm saving tens of thousands of dollars on this debt that I would have not had before because of the system? And I am okay with that. I just wanted to know if there's more behind the curtain.
Um, yes and no. Again, so much of this needs visuals, right?
Yeah,
But if you look on the asset side, the interest you earn on your asset is added to the balance and it keeps moving, right?
sure.
You don't
Yeah,
consider that interest riches. You look at the balance as your riches,
yeah,
right? And the same rules apply in the line of credit. The interest savings that you see that you're going to gain, well, it's going to, since it's not going to them, the bank, if it's interest savings, then it stays in the line is considered principal reduction.
right.
Just like on the asset side, it's balance improvement, right? So it just works the other way, right? So you won't feel it so much in your wallet. It's like, oh, now I get to go, I got an extra, I can go out.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Right, right.
You don't feel it like that, right? However, when you do this and you start taking control of the debt, and let's stay away from the mortgage for right now. Let's say we've got a
Okay,
$50,000 line of credit. We have a $30,000 car debt with a $600 payment. That's $600 that's leaving your sphere.
sure.
It's going to
Yeah.
their pocket,
Okay.
right? Well, what's the difference if you got a $50,000 line? What's the difference between you and them? They have resources, 30 grand for a car, and you make a payment to them. Well, you have 50 grand, you have the resources. So if you go pay them off with the line of credit, you get $600 back in your pocket.
Right.
Even though you still owe the debt, you just took ownership of the debt, which means now you took ownership of the payment.
Okay. But I still
Now,
have to pay it off, right? But
right?
that's where you're saving on the interest because your entire paycheck's going into that credit
Precisely.
line. Okay.
Right. So if you have a $10,000 paycheck and the $30,000 car balance, well, you put your 10 grand as a payment, 30 goes to 20.
Yeah.
Now you're only paying interest on 20 grand.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Immediate interest savings right there. And we can calculate it and I can do that for people.
Sure. I know you've got your own tables and
Right.
things. No, I think that's
Now,
very
now,
easy to understand.
right now, let's say you got $8,000 in expenses, right? And so you pull the 8 grand back out of the line of credit, and there's a $2,000 delta, 10,000 income, 8,000 expenses.
Right.
That's $2,000 surplus. That's your net payment against the debt for the month. So as the interest saving, let's say the interest savings was 100 and you had $2,000 in extra, you just paid back $2,100 on that card debt. You still have access to all the 2,000 because it's in your line of credit,
Right.
right? And so, and before we did that, you had 2,000, you'd still have $2,000 left over, less the car payment, because the car payment went to somebody else. So you
Right.
would have paid back $1,400 on the line of credit, but now you're paying back 2,000 because you got the $600 back. Now back to you and seeing the cash flow. Well, there's $600. If you want to go spend $200 on a night out with your friends, go do it. Now you still paid back $1,800 of the car debt. You still have access to it, and you still were able to go play with your friends.
Right.
All right. So now the next month comes along. Same thing happens. And now say that you don't go out with your friends. Well, now there's an extra 200. Now you paid back $2,000 for the month. I don't know if I'm losing you on this
You're
now.
not.
I'm
No,
going kind of fast,
the
but
reason I have this dreamy look on my face is because I'm thinking of all the lines of credit that I have right now that I'm paying minimum balances on, and I'm thinking, why the heck is my paycheck and my wife's paycheck going into my bank making 0.0001% when I should be putting it into the credit line since it's there anyways?
yeah, and you got access. You're not losing access to
No.
the money. That's the greatest thing. And that's why most people, because everybody's smart enough to know to pay back debt quicker, throw extra at it.
Yeah.
Right? It's, common knowledge. But why don't people do that more? Because it's a one-way door. They know they're sacrificing. Well, what if I want to go out with my friends? What if I might need that money for something else? I know it'd be good to pay it off, but I'm putting it in somebody's pocket that I can't get it back.
Right.
That's the biggest problem with the model that we're in right now, right? That's that subordinate position. Oh, here's my money. See you next month. It's their money. It's
Yeah.
ownership, right? Ownership. And if you own the line of credit, and forget the bank's name is on it, they just provided you the tool and the
Sure.
platform. And I tell my students on the interest on the line of credit, be happy to pay them. They're your silent business partner. They're giving you the platform to be able to operate like this, right? And the interest you pay them is just a cost of doing business. But remember, you're screwing them right underneath their nose, right? They're expecting to make the maximum amount of interest on your
Yeah.
efforts. And they don't know what you're doing. You don't need their permission, but you're literally screwing them out of interest under their own nose. Be happy to pay them a little bit of interest along the way. It's just the cost of playing
Yeah.
banker, and they're giving you the tools to do the job.
Yeah. No, there's a
Mhm.
lot of different ways to frame what you're doing, but I like the story that the framework that you're saying it. I think it's really interesting. Like, again, I had that light bulb moment, right? Because I have a couple of credit lines. Some of them are, the balances are at that because I've financed real estate. But again, I'm just making payments on these things and they're using my money. And here I am putting all of my income into a traditional bank because it just works. That's the way society works. So I really like that you're challenging that.
Yep. Well, it's so hard to explain because I didn't set out what I feel and what I know today. I didn't set out like this from the beginning
Right.
because my service, I mean, I'm not selling a product. Everything everything that anybody buys, it's right up here.
Yeah.
And I love to teach, and I'm really good at just transferring what's in my brain to other people. But the beauty of what my business model is that I've got a 6-month guarantee. And that guarantee requires the strategy itself to work as promised, and I have to deliver. Any of my staff have to deliver as promised because we promise a performance review every month, right? So we help you get everything set up. We facilitate you getting the loan. We help establish bill pay day and get all the components in play. And then you've got your first bill pay day. First time it's going to work. Well, I schedule that on my computer so you're not on your own, right? So I'll be there with you to make sure everything worked as well as it should. And every month you send me back your line of credit statement so I can monitor your activity, and I put the information in my spreadsheet and I monitor performance, just make sure everything's in play, make adjustments here and there. And so at the end of 6 months, if we don't provide those monthly performance reviews, guaranteed a refund. So at the end
Mhm.
of 6 months, if it's not working or I'm not working, it's a full refund. But because of that, I've been able to experience all this stuff with customers. And so the first thing people realize is that liberation of one bill payday. I've had more than people call, Bill, I don't have to do this for another 30 days. Nope. Just go live life. And they're just like, oh my God. And and so that's that first experience. But then it's, seeing a 5-year car loan paid off in 2 years. And they're just like, oh my God, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And then being able, because it's our own line of credit and everything we pay back is available, now we go harvest that 25 grand for student loans, credit cards, throw it at the mortgage. I've had people take vacations. I really don't care what you do with the money because I'm not here to tell you where your life is going. You're telling me where your life is going. I'm just the guy, the mechanic that's going to take the 300 horsepower Camaro and I'm going to turn it into 600 horsepower. That's all I'm going to do, and teach you how to drive it without crashing into the wall. But after the 6 months, because I've got a non-ending service, it's a one-time fee, lifetime retainer. So at the end of 6 months, you still have 100% access to me for anything. In fact, I got a call from a guy that joined us in 2009. He called me a couple of days ago, amazed I was still answering the phone. And yeah, he just had a question about what to do with his current line of credit. The guy paid off his properties, and he paid off 2 properties, and now he's got 3 new rental properties, all operating out of the same line of credit, doing what I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, it makes
Crazy thing.
sense.
And if you need help, let me know. I've done this before, as a favor for you having me on your show. If you got the tools in play and you want some counsel on it, I'm
Yeah,
more
no,
than
I
happy to help you.
appreciate that. We'll
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
offline for sure. I'm gonna be throwing your information out into the show notes. I mean, that's why we do these things to give some awareness. It's very interesting. Like I said, Manulife's been up here for a long time. I've been pitched on it at least 5 separate times over the last dozen years, and I've never really. Again, I know myself being in business and real estate, the next shiniest best thing out there that I don't think I could trust myself with a 6 7 figure like line of credit attached to my home.
Nah,
But
you
I
don't
like
want
what
to.
you're saying to just have this little side vehicle. It is the same thing, right? Because you have that minimum payment that you can dump into your mortgage each year. And I mean, it's 10%. So I mean that's a big chunk. But if you're able to do that, I mean, you're paying off your mortgage in half the time, right? I mean, I'm sure there's some kind of, again, anecdotal studies out there. I think everybody can understand that if you're making, the maximum payment that you're allowed to on your mortgage each year, it is going to be paid off not in 30 years, but a heck of a lot sooner, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one reason I can talk so definitively and get real molecular on this is because of that service I was talking to you about. Because I'm like a laboratory.
Yeah.
And the Manulifes and anybody else, any of my competitors now, they don't have that depth of understanding and knowledge because they don't provide that kind of service. Manulife's job is to sell you a loan,
Yeah.
give you the bare bones. This is what you do. Put your money into it, treat it like a checking account. Okay, it'll work like that, but it's not going to work as well as what I'm describing. And the reason I can describe it is because I've got thousands of statements, that I can look at real life data,
Yeah.
and I'm really good with a calculator, and even breaking down a 30-year mortgage, um, I can get real molecular on that. And one reason that I can get that molecular is, for one, I love to learn, right? And this is my business. And so I become an expert in credit itself, right? How it works, how, the credit industry, credit cards versus going to a bank versus mortgage brokers. And, you know, I've got a very well-rounded view, and a lot of it is because I've been sitting in this laboratory scouring over the results. I've told people, money in, money out, and I look at the real live results compared to what we had projected, and it's mind-numbing how accurate, the numbers really are 5 years down the road. But it really just comes down to we're not changing anything but the model, the business model
Right.
of banking and borrowing. Why? Low rates, low payments. It's not doing anybody any favors. And at the 18 trillion we have in debt now, that's going to be 30 within 5-10 years.
Oh,
It's just
yeah.
going to continue to grow, and we're going to come to a point to where the debt has outgrown the consumer's ability to service it.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed, just like the country. And if we don't change the model, we can see the future, and it's not going to be good.
Well, I had a guest on a few weeks ago, and it's interesting because he, again, I think I had asked him the question: have young people given up on the concept of retirement? And his opinion was yes. And I see it all the time, right? Because I think the average, like I'm 53, but the average 25, 30, 35 year old tries to look 20, 30 years into the future and knows that their debt load and they want to, whether they want to travel, like everybody's like, I'm living for today, I'm piling on all this debt. I'm not going to be able to retire. So they don't think about it. His opinion was that people have to smarten up and stop taking on the debt that's being offered to them, and he thought, and I hope he's wrong, that a total financial collapse of the system and people and giving back, again, kind of like a Great Depression, but worse, is going to have to happen to force people to actually go back to the dark ages and just start counting their pennies. What you're offering, though, is for those who are smart enough to listen, is a way out, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my ultimate goal, pal, if I can get this to spread across the country to be a known, acceptable way of banking, borrowing, I could change the financial trajectory of this country overnight. Because I've seen the data. It's none of this is theory. I'm doing exactly what I'm talking about for 19 years, right? So none of this is theory. None of this is a guess. And with what that guy's saying, he's 100% correct. Doomsday.
Yeah.
And it's because of the model. It's because of the way we bank and borrow and follow the flow of the money, right? The bulk of our resources goes into a checking account, and who gets the primary benefit,
Yeah.
right? Billions of dollars they're earning that aren't getting flown back to the source of the fuel, right? We're the blood bag for everybody,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And if anybody's coming at you offering a low rate, low payment, this, that, the other thing, you got to stop and say, what is their agenda? I mean, and again, I'm not trying to put the people down. They're running a business model. And if you're a mortgage guy, mortgage broker, you're working at a bank, you got one job. One. You sell credit or you sell checking accounts.
Well, they have
You
quotas, right?
there yeah, there's and what people do with it, that's not their concern. You know how easy it is to make money when there's no accountability? Wall Street has no accountability to the losses of the consumer.
Right.
None. Mortgage broker, underwriters, appraisers, they have no accountability what happens to you after you get that loan. They don't care. It's something they don't care. It's just not on their radar,
Right.
right? Their job is to extend credit to people, you know, and especially on the asset side, they say, oh, don't pay off a 4% loan and put the rest in the stock market. Well, 9 out of 10 people aren't going to put it in the stock market. And yeah, you could earn more, but you could lose it all,
Yeah.
right? And these are the should ask questions. Forget about the FAQs, frequently asked questions. Think about the should ask questions. Who's got the moral hazard? Who's got the risk? And it's the same way with lending. If you qualify and you want it, they'll give it to you, but you got to deal with it later. The aftermath is you. And if you look at, the model of banking and borrowing, and you see where the flow of them, where the big money's going, that's where the problem is. If we keep maintaining this bad business model, we're doomed. And I'm not a fan of 401ks. I am not a fan of the stock market for young kids or anybody to put 100% of their retirement, right, in a speculative investment that has no floor.
Right.
You know what I mean? And these kids that think, oh my God, if I don't invest today, then I'm doomed for tomorrow. Well, I don't believe in that either. You're doomed if you start giving these people your money today, and then you're going to try to live the American dream, own a home, get married, have kids. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? And we shouldn't stop wanting to do that.
Mhm.
We have to do that to keep the species going. We have to procreate. But so if you're giving all your money to these fund managers and they make money by you giving them their money, right? And then you're gonna, you got homes, you're gonna spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest just to, and you're gonna refinance and chase low rates.
Right.
If you follow the conventional model, you're gonna make a lot of other people rich and you're holding the bag. It's all the responsibility, all of it, all of the risk falls on us. So we have to change the model by which we bank and borrow. And any young kids, 30-year-olds that are just getting, they got student loans, buying a
Yeah.
home and all that. My opinion to them, do not put any money into a 401k. Do not give your money to the stock market yet. If you're going to invest anything, buy yourself some cash value whole life, because that's got a floor, a net. You'll accumulate money in that thing,
Right.
right? That you have liquidity. 401k, you're illiquid. You are under the government's control. That ain't your money until 59 and a half.
Right.
And when you're 30 years old and doing that, dangerous.
Yep.
Take 30 to 40, pay off debt. Have a goal to be debt free at 40, because your 40s, 50s, and into your 60s are your high earning years. That's when you're going to be making your biggest amount of money. And if you're debt free at 40 and you can take 100% of your investable income, right? And
Right.
stock market, I don't want to get in what the right thing to do is, but you're going to have 20 to 25 years of your big earning years, 100% to build your retirement. Spent the first 10 years paying off your debt, so you're debt free, and take those earnings years.
Yeah.
That's where you really make your move.
Yeah, it makes sense. I wanted to go back to, you said that you had a client wanted to know what he was going to do with some rental properties. I have a lot of big part of my audience are real estate investors. Just spend a couple seconds here, a couple minutes here, but talking about how this can apply to a rental property or two. I know the principles would be the same, but I mean, are they, or does it not really apply because you're talking about one, two, three, four rental properties? You have five credit lines, you have a large one, and now you're piecing it out. Maybe it's just a little bit more analysis and premeditation involved.
Yeah, every deal is customized because everybody's a little different. So those are all puzzle pieces, and we got to take a look at them, right? Move them around and see what the best way to do it. But yes, the fundamentals of the strategy are the same: money in, money out. Um, but I only want to work out of one primary line of credit, because you want all your the most important resource you have is the income, whether it be paychecks, rental income, money coming through the door. It's all best hitting one target, because you get a bigger impact. If you start breaking it up, then it's, like taking a 30-06 shell and turning it into buckshot,
Yeah,
right? Each BB doesn't have as much knockdown power.
sure.
And so you just operate out of one primary line of credit, and you can go after one property. You can, let's say we had 50 grand we were going to play with. You can take 50 grand and throw it at one property, take 10 grand and throw it at all five, but everything's going to be driving at that 50, right? Because once you got the line and the balance, that line of credit, that's your focus. Drive that dude down to zero, because the faster that goes down, the faster everything else is going to move. And so you can partition it out any way you want to. But here's one thing that's really, really important, especially for investors. First of all, why are we investing? Is it buy and hold, you want equity later, or are you looking for that passive income? Passive income is usually number one.
Yeah.
Well, you've got rent and you got a mortgage. And that mortgage is dictating what your passive income is, because that rent is encumbered by the mortgage.
Right.
So reducing that mortgage payment or making it go away altogether is optimal. But in the US, I'm not sure how it is up in Canada, but if you have a conventional loan on rental property, primary home, if you have a conventional mortgage, you have the opportunity to recast your payment through the life of the loan. Are you familiar with recasting?
No. Well, I think I have an idea, but let's define it for the audience.
Okay. When you get your loan, original loan, you got 300 grand, 6%, calculate payment,
Okay.
right? It's cast. We cast our payment on the original loan amount for 30 years. Well, a recast means later down the line, when if and this is only good if you're practicing acceleration. All right.
Okay.
So let's say after a year through acceleration, after 1 year, you have the balance that you would have at year 25.
Mm,
Through acceleration, at the end of 1 year, you have the balance that you would have 5 years from now. So
right.
you're 4 years ahead of the game, right? But you still have 29 years left on the mortgage, on your original mortgage, because you got 30, accelerated for a year.
Right. Right.
So now we got 29 years left. But at that point, we got a 25-year balance, but we're still making the 30-year payment, the original 30-year payment.
Right.
So recast is you go back to the lender and say, please recast my payment to be on the current balance for 29 years, because you got 29 years left. So you get a
Yeah.
29-year payment on the 25-year balance, right? This is gold for
Yeah.
acceleration,
Yeah.
because what we did, we just reduced the outflow, because the recast payment's going to be smaller.
Yeah.
On average, my people, their payment falls by $250 on a recast. So what did we do? We just improved
Cash flow.
passive income
I
by
just said, yeah.
$250 just by making a phone call and running a different business model. And when I'm working with people, we're pulling, it could be a $25,000 to $50,000 drop on that first mortgage. Right? So your 300 goes to 250, you do the recast, and that new cash flow is flowing back to the line of credit,
Yeah.
improving our cash flow and speeding up the payoff of what we just pulled off.
Right.
It's
Oh, it's brilliant.
it is. It's just the most, again, and I can't take credit for it, because I can only take credit for figuring out and putting as much time in it as I
Well, you're
have.
the
But it's all,
messenger. There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
But
but again, it's knowing how the back and the 80 that 80-20 rule. Again, I'm the 80% guy, because I've spent 30 years working behind the curtain and understanding how it all works. So I bring all that 80% that's unknown to the public, like recasting. Most people don't know that's even available. Even
yeah.
mortgage brokers don't know anything about it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's only because nobody's exposed it. It's there. And I'm that 80% guy saying, hey, look at this, but it's really cool. The recasting is an incredibly powerful thing in
Well,
this program.
especially since there's no interest impact really. I mean, the
None.
detractor would look at it and say, "Okay, that's great, but now you're giving the bank more interest, but you're not because you're using your strategy, right?"
Well, you're not giving them more interest, right? Because interest is calculated like this on a mortgage: balance times rate divided by 12,
True. Yeah, that's true.
right? And so when you recast, you're only changing the principal portion,
Yeah.
right? And so, because the interest is always going to be balance times rate divided by time. And with a recast, you're not refinancing anything. And that's the beauty of the recast. It's a refinance, getting a lower payment without having to refinance.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing. Nobody should ever have to refinance out of a loan. It
No.
should be a one and done. And then with my program, if you got that $50,000 line of credit or whatever it is, well, that's the last loan you'll ever need, because it's one loan for several purposes. Buy a car, pay it off, go
But
do
does
your
it
roof.
matter what rate that credit line is? Because some credit lines are getting more. I mean, they follow the prime rate and things like that, or it doesn't matter because you're using it against itself.
You're using it against itself. I mean, I've gotten people 15% unsecured lines of credit, $5,000 line of credit, 15%.
Still
Works
works
just
though.
as well.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
you're getting that minimum balance down there.
Yeah, but we did use that to build equity because he didn't have enough equity in his home. So what did we do? We got an unsecured line and used that line to drive down the equity on his first mortgage. I mean, I've had people do this, take 25 grand out of an unsecured line of credit, drop their first mortgage balance down by 25, go back to the bank and apply for a HELOC, $25,000 HELOC the very next day because the bank only goes by the balance of the first mortgage.
Oh, and you can flip it then and get the other one out, and yeah. No, I
Yeah.
mean, you can see where you need somebody like you, Bill, to actually, again, behind the curtain, the puppet master kind of just, or not puppet master. That's a really bad analogy, but the guy pulling the levers, the Wizard of Oz. There you go.
Yeah, but I'm teaching people how to be the puppet master because you're
Yeah,
puppet mastering the banking system.
yeah,
You know, you're using one loan and recycling your income in and out of it. You know, you're playing banker.
yeah.
Take your income and leverage it to your advantage and just recycle and reuse.
Love it.
You know, I get people paying off, you know, 350, $400,000 worth of credit out of a $25,000 line of credit just by piece by piece, piece by piece, piece by piece, just moving it in and out. I mean, to this day, I mean, it just amazes me. It's just the craziest thing. We're just moving the money and let the money do the work.
So, is it the surplus that somebody normally has in their normal lifestyle that's driving down that balance? Is that what's
Um,
happening, or
well,
is
that's
it the
100%. That's
yeah?
the only way to make it happen because you can't save enough interest for acceleration
No,
ever, right? So it is that surplus. And more people have more money than they really realize once you start looking at it in this new environment, you know, because because most people are scared of what are the uh-ohs. You know, they always think of these, the worst months that they've had the last year. Oh God, I had to go spend $1,200 on tires and my insurance was due. They look at that one month like it just blew up their life, right? But
yeah.
it's only one month. If you look at the rest of the months, it's pretty much humdrum. And so when I do my analysis, I build in the uh-ohs, because I've got full control of all the numbers. So I can add $500, $3,000 a year in unknown expenses,
But
right?
it stays in the
See how
same
that's
credit
going,
line, though, right?
but it always stays in the same credit line. And my projections are always based on 2 paychecks a month. But so many people are paid biweekly. So there, instead of
Yeah,
24 checks, there's 26.
yeah,
And so those 2 extra checks that people, they, under the current model, they just come in and go out, come in and go out, come in and go out. But once you see those rolling through this strategy and through the line of credit,
yeah,
that's when people go, how did I pay all this money back so quick? I don't earn this much money.
yeah.
Well, you do. And now that you can see what it looks like in a new environment, it's an amazing thing. And another thing that people just naturally do, when you get to irresponsible spending, people will stop because now they understand the power of a dollar in that line of credit. Because again, I teach, I teach, I teach, I teach. I pound this stuff in people's head and I stay in touch with them enough till I can say, see what I was talking about? That money over here in this line of credit's got a lot more value than that cup of coffee, huh? You
Yeah.
know, I remember a guy years ago, he called me up and said, what did you do with my wife? Because this is not the same woman. She loves playing with the money and she loves our finances now and she's not spending as much. So,
Because I mean, that's a good point. I mean, we're going out for coffee. We swipe our card at Starbucks. We go to McDonald's. Is your system advocating that that is technically coming out of the credit line? It's not like you're moving $200 into something that you can slap your debit card on. Is it staying in the same account?
well, the money's always staying in the same account because that's where you're going to keep it. But as far as you living your life and doing your thing, I don't care how many cups of coffee you buy.
No, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to
Well,
your
you
point
still,
of being responsible, teaching responsibility. I could see, like you said, the power of a dollar. So again, I'm going out for supper. It's going to cost me $100 if it's coming out of the credit line. I'm already thinking, man, when do I want to do that? Because of the interest, the calculation, and those types of things. That's what's going through
you're
my head.
you're overthinking it. You don't have to overthink it
Left
like that.
brainer. Yeah.
Well, no, that's okay. No, it's totally common, right? And a lot of people say that, but you're just overthinking it. You don't just go live your life, right? You've got access. I mean, there's no change in anything you're doing. Maybe how you spend it, but and I don't teach responsibility. Again, that's all Dave Ramsey kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Is that, like I said, people don't need my help running their lives. And when it comes to your lifestyle, who am I to tell you how to live your life?
Right.
You know what I mean? And again, through the process I go through, uh, I can tell through conversation, and people get real open with me too in that environment. I have no problem turning away from somebody to say, you're just not fiscally responsible enough to do this. Like, I'm
Right.
not going to be part of the failure.
Right.
And so I'm really good at weeding those people out. And most of the people I deal with are 750 credit scores. I mean, they don't need my help with anything.
Right.
They want a solution because they're looking at their future and saying, we're going to retire with car payments and mortgages if we keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And nobody should be retiring with mortgages and car payments unless they want to, you know? But again, back to the monitoring and all that. No, none of it. You just get your money in, live your life, and I teach people, and I do this up front. If you see a problem, you're going to recognize it. And the problem is, well, that balance keeps going up. If you look, you're monitoring your HELOC statement or your line of credit statement. That's all you need to monitor, really, on a monthly basis. It takes you 15, 20 minutes a month to say, how are we doing? You got an opening balance and an ending balance. If that ending balance over the past 2-3 months keeps continuing to rise, well, if I bring it up saying you can do whatever you want, but you're not going to achieve the goal that we set out to,
Right.
you know? Um, but people do this on their own, okay, well, why has it gone up so much? Well, we've been going out to dinner, we haven't been fiscally responsible. Let's get back on track. Okay. We know what to do.
Yeah.
But there's also going to be months like Christmas. I mean, when I get statements for January, 100% of the balances have gone up
Yeah.
from December because we had Christmas, we had holidays. But I account for that too in my analysis and when I'm putting all this stuff together. But it's not a micromanaged thing. You just go live your life and do your thing. And if you're monitoring your own performance, you can see when there's a problem. You know
Yeah.
what it is.
Okay. Beautiful.
But 9 out of 10 people are fiscally responsible. I mean, nobody's, it's like Dave Ramsey talks about, like, that little plastic credit card in your hand, it's got total control over your body and your mind. No, people think they know what they're doing, you
Yeah.
know? So I don't have to worry too much about, people going off the rails. I
Yeah.
really don't.
Okay. Well, it's been amazing. I actually had so many light bulb moments. So you can see, or at least the audience can see me, my head down here. It's because I'm writing lots of notes. We'll definitely talk in the green room after. I like to finish off every episode by asking the same question because everybody has a different answer to the same question. So I prepped you for this a little bit, but you haven't had a ton of time. So let's see what you have to say. So, Bill, this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success? And what does winning look like for you?
And, that's a tough question for me to answer because I'm going to answer outside the realm of what most people probably say. Because success to me, it's not a destination. I mean, I've succeeded and failed my whole life, one way or the other. And I think everybody else has those highs and lows. So, as far as success for me personally, I look at it as self accountability. My core values are honesty, loyalty, and common courtesy. And if I can look in the mirror at the end of the day and know that I upheld all three of those and I can lay my head on the pillow and sleep, that's successful for me. From a monetary standpoint, I don't set those kind of success things on my head. And when I look at, success on what my students have been able to accomplish and know that I had a take in that, then that's success for me. The success of the people that I teach. My own success personally, from a monetary standpoint, it's irrelevant. I
Yeah.
don't measure it
Well,
by that.
living life with purpose. I mean, that's what makes it fun, right? That's what
Yeah.
makes it not feel like work.
Yeah. And then winning, I mean, again, that's a personalized things for everybody, and for me personally, again, I focus so much on consumers because I don't know, like it's a bit of a sickness for me. But winning for me and for anybody else should just be able to say, you know what, I'm happy with what I have. I don't care what anybody else's measurement tool or what anybody thinks. If I'm happy with what I'm accomplishing in my life, I'm winning.
Love it. Okay. Well, great place to stop, Bill. Show notes will be, I'm sure, a good place for people there. And yeah, I encourage the audience to reach out. This is not a new concept, but I love the way Bill has framed it. It's certainly turned my mind around. So thank you very much for coming on with me today.
Thank you, Garrett. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks
All
for
right.
listening.
Yeah.
All
All right. Take care.
right. See you.